everybody, and welcome to this month's ID update. Thank you for joining us. If you are here in the chat, please do jump in and get involved today, whether you've got questions, topics you want to discuss, or you just want to say hello, shout out to your mum or whatever, throw it into the chat. That's so I'm very close to forgetting my mum's birthday this month, so
Oh
it's
no.
stuck in my mind. But luckily, my wife to the rescue.
Nice.
With the kind of don't forget. So it's that time of the year where we start going to big events and coming away with big or perhaps small ideas sometimes. For me this week, that was Learning Technologies, like the biggest UK event, which is always very interesting to go to. That's what I've been up to for this month, really. The lead up to that and then going to that. Heidi, how are you? How's your month been?
Good. I've just been working and I'm now coaching soccer. Fun fact. My son's soccer coach quit the Sunday practice of the week practice started. And so was in the chat begging other parents to step up. I played soccer for one season when I was about 6 years old. But luckily, my ex-husband, who's on good terms with me, is a former varsity soccer player. So I enlisted his help and offered to be the head coach with him as my assistant. So that is how modern families coach soccer.
Nice. So sort of this time next year, you'll be, I don't know, I'm trying to, yeah, we're supposed to know about football in the UK. It's like it's the big sport. I've got no idea. You'll be in the cup.
Yes,
and, competing
exactly.
for the
FIFA World Cup.
There we go. That sounds right. I've heard of that one. Go Sports! Woo!
That's how I feel, and I'm the coach. Here we are.
Oh, please have a big banner saying "Go Sports Team." That'd be hilarious. Super. So now we've alienated all of the European audience, a good chunk of just general sports fans. Let's dive into some L&D topics. So yeah, I mean, the plan for today, just so you all know, is basically I went to Learning Technologies, saw some stuff. We're going to discuss it and see what we think. There will probably be a fair amount of, well, we could obviously do this better, as there always is. But I've got to say, actually, there is always a temptation with these events to, I think, become quite cynical about them, because an expo is an expo, right? The kind of the underlying truth is an expo is a sales pitching scenario. These companies spend crazy money on these very small or sometimes exceedingly large areas in an expo hall because they want you to buy their stuff. Once you accept that as the premise of the entire thing, there is then some value. It's got to be said. So I'm going to try and avoid being overly cynical about the salesy bits. But let's start there anyway. There is still a depressingly large amount of, we've printed our logo on some crap that no one really wants. Here, please take it from the stand. Pens, tote bags, coffee mugs, cuddly toys, anything and everything that is not going to persuade you to buy their product or indeed make you better at what you do. The flip side to that was I saw a lot more stands giving away books this year. Like proper, not crappy, like 10-page, really it's about our product, but books, but like actual books, like published by genuine author books that they had purchased to give away to people.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was genuinely quite impressed. Now, some of them, don't get me wrong, the authors worked for their businesses.
Sure.
That's kind of often how publishing works as well, right? The people who are CEO of an LMS and talk about agile learning, for instance, get it published by like Kogan Page, which is like our equivalent to like when ATD publish books. They're good books. They're properly published. They're well written. They usually have some real value in them, and they're not a sales pitch. because the publisher doesn't allow for that. It's really good.
Sure.
Other stands, though, Get Abstract's a good example of this. They do like the book summary app. They would get, if you took like a free trial, you got a real book, like a free actual proper book. I think, where's mine? Here we go. The Art of Explanation. It's like a proper book.
Yes, I did something similar at DevLearn, and I got a Clark Quinn book that I had been wanting that has been in my Amazon wish list for forever.
This is it. I think that, to me, it's like I'm always a bit dubious about giving stuff away on the stand. Largely because when you walk past the bins outside the expo center, you kind of want to cry for the planet a little bit because we've just generated more waste in 2 days than we should have generated in a year. But when you something like a book, that's got real value, not just financial value, but reading it will hopefully make you better at what you do. Which I think from a largely sort of practitioner centric perspective makes going to the expo worth it. If you're not actively looking for an LMS or a new authoring tool, or you don't have a budget, you don't have buying power in your business, you can actually go and walk away with a thing that makes you better at your job. So I've got to say, I mean, I would say there were probably somewhere between kind of 12 and 15 stands giving away proper books.
Wow.
Which is actually quite a few. It sounds very small when you think, oh, there's over 100 stands, blah, blah, blah. But actually, I think that's a pretty big proportion. Whereas I think last
Agreed.
year, it would have been 1, maybe 2.
Sure.
So I thought that was a really positive improvement. There was still the same group of companies with obnoxiously large stands, and then everyone else with a kind of 3x3, 4x5 sort of size. So I know I said it last year, but I'd love to see everyone just get the same size stand.
Agreed.
And the expo competition actually being about the content of what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be fascinating. And then we get to, I guess, 2 things that I really want to talk about. One is the actual tech, which is fascinating, I found this year. And the other one is seminars. So I published an article a few weeks ago, somewhat deliberately in the run-up to Learning Tech, about how there's a certain subset of seminars that I hate. And that is and this is very personal, but it's we've brought a customer with us to tell you how awesome we are seminar. For one thing, the customer's never actually given the stage. It's always the customer and a member of staff. Because you couldn't just let the customer just say stuff, because they might, say the bits you don't want them to say. I would have more time for them if it was just give them the stage, let them deliver a seminar. Who cares if they happen to mention your company?
Sure.
By all means, slap on the first slide, sponsored by whatever, because I get that the company bought the slot, and that's fine. But yeah, I don't like the pretense that you can totally trust this because it's the customer. So I don't quite buy it. But there were fewer of those. I actually attended 3 seminars across 2 days that were genuinely value first seminars. Now it's no less true, but I'm biased in one case, which was Phil, Lord David from Calidus's thing. I've known Phil for years. It was all about skills adoption. Didn't talk about the platform, didn't talk about the product, didn't really even talk about the company. Just said, we like talking about skills. If you want to talk about skills, we're on this stand. Then spent the next half hour talking about skills.
Nice.
And interestingly, it's the first seminar where I've ever heard someone say, if you just get halfway through the journey and that works for you, and therefore you don't need technology, stop there and don't waste time and money. It's like, oh shit, that's an option. My God. But it was refreshing,
Yeah.
And I was thinking back to sort of some of the conversations we've had about skills over the past sort of year, and skills seem to be a bigger and bigger part of the conversation at these events. But I wonder what your thoughts are around what role products and technology have around
Mm.
skills, because I'm still like I'm not uncertain about certain things, but I think there's a lot of, I don't know, gray area in there. So have you got any thoughts?
I think my initial reaction is that I think the issue with a lot of products is that they aim to accomplish particular skills, right? Or they aim to be able to enable particular skills, right?
Mhm.
And they don't understand the context or the world that they're coming into. And a lot of times it's because, like, the product owners or the people creating the products aren't really in our world. They just saw an opportunity to close a gap, right?
Fair point.
Because somebody close to them or somebody that they know, or they read something somewhere that said, oh, there's a need for tech in this industry, right? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff around educational technology. There has to be, because of how many people are coming into our field and creating products, right? And I think that it becomes really detrimental to those products and the people who own them and create them, um, to not look at the bigger picture, because I think that there isn't one product that can close a skills gap. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the way products are kind of built, right? Not to be part of a tech stack. And I think one of our big misses in L&D is that, like, every other department in the company is using a tech stack, right? They've got like 4 or 5 different softwares, but a
Mm.
lot of times we've got like, hey, we got this authoring tool and this LMS, and that's all we're going to use for the next 20 years because it's
Very true.
all we need. And um, I think that that's starting to shift a little bit as well, because of the ease of being able to create products in tech.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that more tech savvy L&D people who aren't me, because I'm not the one, will create these products so that we can use them.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, I think, a lot of the same stuff that I'm kind of running into with it. And I think it's kind of at times it's holding me back from getting really excited about it. And it kind of then let's jump from seminar to tech for a minute. I'll go back to seminars later. The bit of tech that I found is probably the one tech bit that I found disappointing. Actually, everything else was a very positive outlook actually on tech and how people are talking about it, but there was still a fundamental lack of ability to answer what I think is the only important question when looking at a bit of ed tech, and that's, what problem does it solve? I saw a lot of like incredibly clever technology, like genuinely impressive, but fundamentally not useful. And I really wish those two things were linked, because I love impressive, technically clever things, and I want to love them and I want to think them valuable. But in our world, that's not the point. um, we don't need to look clever. We don't need the shiniest bit of kit. We need to solve real problems. And I would say in 9 out of 10 conversations I had with a vendor, there was they really struggled to articulate exactly what real problem this new feature they were super excited to tell me about was actually solving. Or
Yeah.
when they could, to my mind, the problem was not an L&D problem in the first place. Prime example, I was chatting to someone about, let's all hold our breath for a moment and not scream, uploading a PDF and it will generate an entire e-learning course for you. So, yeah, this is it. My leading question actually was, why would I want to do that? Why does this feature exist? It sounds terrible. Um, uh, it didn't help that the example course they kind of put up was, we take a PDF, i.e., a document full of text, and create this incredible course, which was 30 slides of text. Um, with the occasional stock image of like a man or woman just sitting on the edge of the page smiling or thumbs up or thumbs
Right?
down.
Oh,
It's like, oh my God, this is bad. So what problem does it solve? Oh, well, we never have time. And so things go, business problems go unaddressed. It's like, okay. So this allows you to address them really quickly. Does it? Mm, does it just allow me to create like terrible time wasting slideshows really, really quickly? It showed a real interesting grasp of what is a real problem initially,
sure.
to say not enough time, not enough resource, too many problems to try and
Sure.
solve, and then fundamentally misunderstand it in the next step.
Just fumbled the solution.
This what again I think it is actually like they identified a problem, and then before they even got to is the solution good, bad, whatever, they fundamentally misunderstood the problem that they had identified. Because like I would argue the problem isn't that we're not building things quick enough. Because they've gone from not enough
Yes.
time, not enough resource, therefore we need to do more quicker. And I would argue that actually not enough time, not enough resource, therefore we actually need to find a way to do less, i.e., identify when a problem is not ours to solve and then not try and train away an IT problem or a performance
Yeah.
management problem or a
Yeah.
line manager problem.
Right. Be more
So,
deliberate.
yeah, this is it. And I get why they didn't build for that, because that's not a technical solution. That's that's us being better at our jobs as
Yeah.
opposed to them selling us a thing, right? But I would say that like that was quite a common theme.
Sure.
Was there was these identified a real problem, fundamentally misunderstood it, built a thing to fix the problem in the not necessarily the worst way, but in a way that creates more problems than it actually solves the
Sure.
original.
And I find that a lot of these companies too will come up with a solution that is about more stuff and more quantity and more uh, junk, if I can say junk, right? But like more courses doesn't necessarily mean better, right? More better outcomes, better whatever it is, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the challenge I was running into more and more. Has my camera gone blank? I think it has.
It sure has.
Oh dear, but you can all still hear me, so that's all right. We'll keep going, and I'll try and fix the camera as we go. This is interesting. The show has now become an upright show. I'm moving around the office
Live
trying to fix
show
the camera. Look at
problems.
that.
We love it.
Cool. Oh, this is interesting. So it's actually a camera problem. That's exciting.
Oh. Oh no.
Let's see if the camera wants to come back on. I'm gonna go with a no. My camera seems to be dead. Oh no, there we go. Look, it's back.
You did it. I had no doubt.
There we go. That was exciting and a little worrying. I'm not going to lie. So we moved into this new house with my new offices and everything, and there's no surge protection. So,
oh no,
I was momentarily nervous that a camera had just died, but no, everything's fine. No need to worry. I am now out of focus. That may have to be how this is for the rest of the show. I apologize that everything is now blurry except for the books behind me. I'm not sure.
I'm always blurrier than you are because I do not have a fancy camera and I often just use my built-in. So there we are. Now you look like me.
There you go. It was clearly worth all the money, as you can see, for this phenomenal picture quality. That's marvelous. Well, thank you for bearing with us during those technical problems. So yeah, the problem with that, I think, is, at least my view on this, having spent some time as a product manager for an ed tech company and working with a couple of others, is that I think there's real pressure from customers often. So from our side of the fence on ed tech companies to fix problems for us that are not tech problems. So I think it's important that it'd be very easy to say the problem lies exclusively with the vendors themselves. And I don't think it does.
No.
As a product manager, I spent a lot of time speaking to customers and trying to ascertain what would be useful and what problems they were facing. The number of them would talk to me about those kinds of issues. That would talk to me about how they're struggling to basically understand the problems in their business,
Yeah.
and the difficulty in as a product manager in trying to explain to them there is no tech product that can fix that. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you're just not doing your job very well. Now, no one
Sure.
wants to hear that from a tech vendor,
Right.
for a start, and the tech vendor and the investors in said tech vending company also don't want to do that, you know. So there is a little bit of some of the fault in this, I think, lies on our side of the fence in terms of what we ask for and what we respond to. Like, as much as I kind of rolled my eyes at the robot and kind of walked past the teddy bear waving stands, blah, 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 loads of people were queuing up there.
Yep.
Look at LinkedIn, there'll be plenty of pictures of selfies with the robot and plenty of
Yeah.
people going home with their teddy bear and loads of people with their mountain of pens and blah, blah, blah. And then those products are pretty popular. So there's enough blame to go around for the bad stuff.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I said I wanted to focus more on the positives anyway, and I think the biggest thing that made me like physically happy. I was walking around and loads of people were talking about research.
Nice.
Like, there were
Really?
I was so like just sort of meander around because I couldn't go to everything, but I want to get a good feel for everything. The number of stands and the number of like seminar slides I was seeing with like the World Economic Report we were talking about at the start of the year, everyone's using stats from that about rate
Must
of
be
skill
us.
change. I'm taking full credit.
We influence them.
This is it. Like, the World Economic Forum might have been producing this report for years, and you put all the data together, but clearly it was us that got this out. No. But it was just so good to see. Fosway Group were there, and they run like roundtables at the events. They were oversubscribed. There was people were just flocking to the stand to get their heads around this research and to hear from the researchers themselves. A fair few stands and vendors that I spoke to were talking about stats. They were talking about, we've been working with our customer base over the last couple of years. We've got this information from them. This percentage of them are facing this problem. I don't know. It just seemed to show like a real grasp of the fact that this stuff's important. And it being accurate is important, and it not just being we think, we feel, we've observed in the world, but have no data to back this up. I thought that was a really, really positive shift.
What do you think is causing that? I know it's going to be mere speculation, but I'm just curious on your thoughts, because I have a couple ideas, but I want to hear what you think.
Yeah. See, I would love to say that I think it is that we are becoming a more discerning customer and demanding that from them. And we might be. Like, the only thing that makes me think that's not the answer is how happy that being the answer would make me. Because a little part of our brain is like, is how much you want that to be true the reason it's the thing you think it is? I would love that to be the case. And I think for some people, it probably is. I do also think there's an element of times are harder at the moment.
Yeah.
And when budgets are tight and scrutiny increases, people tend to become more discerning. And it gets harder and harder to get something signed off by someone beyond your department.
Sure.
And I wonder if that is where the change is now, to get something signed off by a senior leader or whatever, having hard stats, big names attached, things like that will kind of tip the scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are the two that kind of stick in my mind.
That makes sense.
Have you got any thoughts?
My initial thought was that perhaps, and maybe this is also wishful thinking, probably this is also wishful thinking, but that AI has kind of created this, like, if we think about, because I used to teach information literacy in college, right? So I think about things in terms of that a little bit sometimes. And if we think about like sites like Snopes or like, you know, those like
Mm-hmm.
fact-checking websites that you used to look up to see if like something was true or not. Now the resources that we're being encouraged to go to are the ones that are being called out for being unreliable, right? Like Google's received a lot of flack in recent days because they're like, the search results are garbage anymore, right? I learned a new word that I thought maybe we could talk about today, along with that, called inshitification. Have you heard this? Where somebody gets to the top, like a Google, right? They get to the very top of their niche market, whatever, and then they just like don't really care anymore, and they don't give a shit, and then their product goes to shit, and it's just a lovely little slippery slope. And so that, like, I think that combined with like what we're learning about AI and how it hallucinates and how we don't know if we can trust like what it's giving to us or spitting out at us without like extra research. I think people are becoming a little bit more vigilant, but I think that like combined with what you're saying about the economy and times being tough and people having to be more deliberate, but also to defend their job, right? Like to have a little bit more substance behind what they're doing and understand a little bit more about what they're doing and why they're doing it so that they don't lose their job to AI like they keep hearing about. I think maybe those things are also factors.
Yeah, I think that could be. I think that it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as well, there's an element of, and I'm not sure if we've really. I think there are some examples of it in our space actually, kind of because the other side of inshitification, that it is a phenomenal word, isn't it? It gets discussed in the kind of very nerdy tech space a lot, specifically about Microsoft. How Microsoft has such a stranglehold on the home operating system, it is now actively and deliberately making Windows worse.
Yeah.
When you think about now, Windows 11, as Windows 10 did, advertises shit to you. Like, you open your start bar of the software you bought from them. Like, it's not free software. You paid for it.
No.
There are adverts in it. Like,
Yep.
that's, 20 years ago, that would have been deemed outrageous.
Yep. Agreed.
They've actively made Windows worse because they have a stranglehold. And when I look at companies like Cornerstone, it's probably my go-to example. That platform has been getting significantly worse year on year for quite some time. If they had just stopped developing the platform 5 years ago, it would be better. That should be a red flag to I think everyone. Something interesting in the chat actually. I think Matt said, or Matt Kez. Sorry, it's YouTube names. I can never quite know what's a name, what's something else. That the solution is good for the organization buying into it and not the learner.
I like that.
I think it's interesting because for me, buying a tech solution, why are we thinking that the learner and the organization, and I'm not saying we as in the literal us here, but broadly, that the learner and the organization are wanting different things? And I think often we in L&D, because I know I used to fall into this trap a lot, and I still sometimes do it now, in that I separate the two. In actual fact, generally speaking, our job is to figure out where the two align and then buy for that space rather than buying for one or the other.
Sure.
Because when we talk about kind of like what are we here to do? We're here to make sure that the business achieves its goals.
Yeah,
that's our job. And I think setting aside the kind of the learner versus organization in the sense of like organizations aren't your friends, your employer is not your family, etc., etc., etc. Broadly speaking, the employee wants to keep their job and wants to get paid. The organization, in order to keep that person employed and pay them, needs to make more money year on year than they did before. They are actually pretty aligned in what they want. I think we often invent, not universally, but I think we often invent needs for the learner that the learner never doesn't have. I think that's where a lot of the learner engagement bollocks comes from. And to be clear, I do not mean everything that's ever tagged with learner engagement. There's some phenomenal work being done around engaging people with content. Companies like Mass Marketing doing interesting stuff, Insight Media doing cool stuff and research on it, that kind of thing. Love that. My issue is more around the edtech doohickeys that are engagement tools.
Yeah.
Whether it's the badge, the leaderboard, the spinning wheel that pops up on screen and gives you a thumbs up.
Gamify yourself.
All this kind of nonsense. The importance of being able to type your own name into the start of a storyline course so the character's got your name, because that just, I mean, I can't learn anything unless the main protagonist of the story is also named Tom.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
It's why books are just a useless tool for learning, because it doesn't
Right.
have my name
You
in them.
can't put yourself in their shoes at all. No.
This is it. No. So yeah. Oh, my camera's gone again. There seems to be a problem. I think we might just have to give up on this camera. Never mind. I shall now be a disembodied voice. This is the voice of L&D. Do better.
It's the hackers from the ed tech industry. They're upset about what you're saying, and they have hacked your camera and turned it off so that you cannot talk about them anymore.
Well, I don't think they've got any grounds to be upset, because overall, I actually think it was. I think they have come phenomenally far in 1 year. Because last year I had very little good to say after this event. Nothing against the event organizers; they're lovely people, but the actual showing was appalling. It was just everyone screaming AI as loud as they possibly could while waving their arms in the air. It was quite sad to see the industry in that position. And there was still some of that. I'm not going to pretend that every stand didn't have an AI sticker plastered on top of its branding from 5 years ago, but it seems to have shifted from AI to powered by AI. Now, how meaningful of a change that is, I'm not honestly sure. But I would like to think it's a meaningful one. You never know. My suspicion is that they're picking up on the fact that people are a bit AI fatigue, I guess, is kind of the phrase that gets attached to this. I don't think we are actually bored of talking and hearing about AI, because the minute there is a talk about AI, everyone goes to it.
Yeah.
I think maybe what we're bored of is the same vapid comment about AI. We're using AI to make you do more for less and blah, 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 blah. And we want that next bit of the conversation, maybe.
Right. I've seen a lot in recent days, especially on social media, where it's like people are just posting I don't know. I'm going to use Ross Stevenson as an example because I like his content on AI, but I feel like they're posting what he posted 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like this really high level stuff, and it's just very generic. And it's like, well, AI should be this and it should be that. And it's like, we already determined that. We already talked about that 2 years ago. Like, where were you that you're now just entering the conversation? And I don't know if they're trying to be thought leaders or what, like telling people how and when and what to use AI for. But I know part of the reason that Tim Slade put out, I think it's like a state of instructional design type survey that he just recently put out there. I know that part of the reason for that was because he was like, I'm desperate to see how people are actually using AI in their jobs, because he's like, he has a theory that people are not using it in the way that is being talked about on LinkedIn at all. And if people are using it at all, they're usually using it in very different ways than we're hearing about, and we're seeing such, I don't know what the right word is, but like the AI dolls, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's making an AI doll. It's fun. Yeah, that's fine. It's a trend. Yeah, that's fine. But like, it doesn't really, my issue with it is that people that are new to L&D, people that are new to instructional design, especially people that are coming from outside of corporate, like educators and people like that, they are going to think that that is what we do. And it is not what we do. And I struggle with it too. Like Tim and I have talked about it quite a bit, like this disconnect between what people are saying AI is and does on social media versus how it's actually being used in practice in our organizations with our clients, etc.
Yeah, this funny enough, like this was a big topic of conversation. And there was really like there are lots of like little things that I'll use AI for in my day. Most of them are not L&D tasks. Like
Agreed.
I find it much more useful around basic productivity and
Mm-hmm.
administrative stuff. I find it quite useful in some data work, although useful but not reliable is kind of the struggle there.
Yeah.
Um, but the only like genuinely, well, I had two interesting conversations about AI, although one was individual and with a vendor, and the other was scattered across lots of conversations across the day because I kept bringing it up with people after someone introduced me to the idea of it, which was really interesting. Um, the vendor side one was about skills prediction. And this was the first time I was like, okay, this is
Interesting.
super interesting.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about kind of the need for a more agile approach to skills. Skills are changing. What used to take a year to go out of date is now out of date within minutes of being written, etc., etc., etc. So we basically got into this discussion about, so what do we need? And we landed on the fact that what we need to be able to do is start getting distance prediction models in the same way that we try and predict the weather or we try and predict sort of economic forecasts. We need to start doing that with skills. We need to be able to look at an organization and take into account, yes, the business and the business's intention, but also the global situation, all their
Sure.
competitors and their publicly stated objectives,
Mm.
other related industries, the economy, world politics, all that sort of stuff, and go, so in 5 years' time, what does this model think the skill set of this employee will need to be? Because then we can start. Oh, we don't want to start trading for 5 years' time because it will change massively as time rolls on,
Of
right?
course.
Sometimes we have 5 years of the world that are very stable, very predictable. Sometimes we have 25 minutes of a press conference and the world changes. I don't want to say who might be responsible for that, but it's not here, basically.
No comments.
No,
I'm just gonna
but
be over here.
and that all at the minute, it's funny. Those kind of comments at the minute always feel like they're about that one situation, but there's always someone doing crazy shit somewhere in the world. We're just not used to it being this particular place. Whereas, I mean, we had Boris Johnson as prime minister. No, but again, that the model would not, maybe 20 years ago would not have predicted Brexit. is, an,
Sure.
is another one of
Sure.
those kind of like, I'm sorry, you've done what moments from a kind of predictive standpoint. I mean, the day before the vote, in fact, the day of the vote, we were talking about how it was a sure thing. There was no way this was going to happen. Some things are not easily predictable,
Yeah.
but it would at least start getting us to think beyond what do we need to train for the next couple of weeks. Because yes, we would have that 5 year view, but from that you could obviously work in. You could think, okay, so
Of
which of
course.
those are the priority requirements in the next year, rather
Yeah.
than waiting for, oh crap, the business has changed. We now need this skill. We've done nothing to build this skill. We have no SMEs. We have no framework for training these or developing these skills, and we need them now. That leaves you
Yeah.
with either the choice of terribly quick and ineffective upskilling or hiring in new talent, which is expensive.
Well, and what's interesting to me is I've like personally been using ChatGPT to help me build a legal case. I won't get into the details,
Okay.
but like I'm skeptical, right? Like I'm like, is this really a legitimate use for this? And so as I've been kind of trying to navigate my way through, I've been having it give me likelihoods, right? Like tell
Mm.
me the likelihoods of if I send this particular letter to these people, how are they going to respond and what is the likelihoods? And with, I would say about 85% accuracy, it has correctly predicted what has happened so far. And I find that
Interesting.
very fascinating because it And then I ask it too, like as it gets more information, I say, okay, here's how they responded. Here's how I'm responding. Can you update your likelihoods? And it does. And it gives the reason for why, and it goes through like the different things. So, I mean, it's able to do that. Is it going to be 100% accurate right now? Probably not, but it's probably going to be a bit more accurate than a lot of siloed leaders in an organization making their own assertions and putting them together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, score one for deterministic universe. That's exciting. But probably beyond the scope of this particular live stream, however. No, the nature of reality and free will and human choice. No, again, probably not for us to discuss. But I don't know. To me, that those conversations were the ones where I was starting to go, okay, this is genuinely interesting, useful. It seems technically viable with the current technology as well.
Yeah.
And that's my other frustration is there's still so much talk about eventually when the next generation of comes out, we'll be able to do this. It's like, I get that, like, if it's your world, AI particularly is your world, that's fine. I kind of don't care. I got to be honest. I've only got so much bandwidth. L&D is my world. Can I currently use it? If the answer is no, then it's kind of so what.
Sure.
I don't want to buy
Yeah.
into a theoretical future when things are
Of
changing so
course.
quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The flip side of all of that then is the impact of using AI. So obviously we recently had the article from Sam Altman about how much saying please and thank you costs OpenAI. Side note, I've never been so happy about reading something in all my life, I don't think. Like just being polite takes money away from him. And that's fantastic news. The flip side of that is that, of course, you could say, oh, it's burning his money. But what burning his money actually looks like is just hurling trees into a furnace. Because the kind of ecological impact of AI is quite staggering. We had a lot of discussions about that and about whether it's actually sustainable, and about how that's going to be kind of mitigated. And the only thing we come up with is that these companies are going to have to put massive price tags on these tools. Which, you know, we've already seen with OpenAI. If you want their their big package, it's £200 a month now as an individual.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of like, oh, that's outrageous, blah, blah, blah. But actually, I think the majority of people were like, well, actually, maybe, you know, do I need to run every email that I'm going to send through ChatGPT? Like, did I have some big problem before ChatGPT launched about writing emails? No, I never really struggled with emails. I got to be honest. Like, occasionally I wouldn't respond to them, but it's not really helping me with that. I've still got to choose to do it.
True.
And the other thing was about what it's doing to us as professionals.
Oh, sure.
And there was a bit of a debate, and I'd be interested to get your take on this about whether or not it is rotting skills we already had, but probably more worryingly, whether or not it's preventing the development of skills in people newer into the industry. I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts about what impact you're either experiencing or seeing or what you think might happen.
Well, first I want to just acknowledge that, yeah, like the sustainability problem. I mean this with all the love in the world, and I'm a terrible hippie for this opinion. But I am one of these people that is like, individual responsibility is not my problem, right? And as much as I will personally be more discerning about what I use ChatGPT for and not use it to just, you know, it's why I chose not to use it to make an AI doll, okay? But why I use it for other important things, right? But it's also, I'm like a big proponent of, if the companies responsible for this stuff would stop pushing it on the consumers and take responsibility for what they are doing to the economy, to the world, to Mother Nature, to, these trees and the water and how much water is used whenever AI is working and computing. We wouldn't have to be told not to say thank you to it, right? And I think, remind me of your second question. Remind me of your actual question, not your second, your actual question. I answered something you didn't even ask me.
So yeah, I mean, it's still good to get your view on it. The impact of its use on skill development for all of us, but also on those who are just getting started.
Yes. So because I have a background as an educator and as a college professor, and because I'm also a mom, and my 8-year-old son last year learned cursive, and accidentally he went to school and told his teacher it was a dead language because I did not realize that they were going to be learning it. And he asked me what something on someone's shirt said once. And I told him, and he said, I need to learn cursive so I can read that shirt. And I was like, you don't need to learn cursive. It's a dead language. And then so when it came, I didn't realize it was still in the curriculum. So when he went to school, he went and told his teacher that his mom said cursive is a dead language. Anyway, I digress. What I think has happened and what I have seen from like my own days in school until now, well, in the public school system is absolutely nothing. Nothing has changed. They're using the same worksheets. But things like multiplication facts, do kids need to know those these days in 2025, right? Do you need to know all of those multiplication facts if you're always going to have one of these with you at all times, a calculator in your pocket, right? Because I remember a friend of mine is like, when we were in 9th grade, our teacher was like, you're not going to have calculators with you at all times. You're going to have to know this stuff. Yeah. And like, he's like, and look at me now, right? So our skills are going to shift, right? Because of all this. Like, we aren't going to need to we're not going to need to like, it's kind of removing the need for like small talk and niceties a little bit. And like, if we're running everything through, like, I feel like sometimes I see email threads that I'm like part of, like just lurking. And it's like AI responding to AI, responding to AI, responding to AI. And you're like, what just happened? Like, did anybody actually type a sentence in this entire exchange? We're losing that, right? But what does that leave us space for, right? I know that the kind of thing that I like to watch personally and see in my social media feeds are like people creating, right? Whether that's art, whether it's mostly music, right? A lot of music. And what are people able to do now that they weren't able to do before because of music? And, kind of optimistically, my hope is that our skills shift in a way that give us more leisure time and allow us to create more and offload some of the administrative bullshit, as I like to call it, over to AI, right? And if we can offload those menial tasks and those menial skills, and we don't have to know multiplication tables anymore, and we don't have to know, the how to kindly respond to a aggressively worded email, right? What does that leave us room for? And I don't think we know the answer yet.
Yeah, I don't like, a big part of me wants to be like, yes, that's the way, that's how.
But you're not an optimist, Tom.
I'm not even sure if this is an optimist pessimist thing.
It's not. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but that was a big part of the conversation we ended up having, because it's like so much of my concern is significantly less about, I mean, times tables remain a mystery to me as much now as they were when I was in school. I was a kid that was stand in front of everyone and say them. And it's like, I can stand at the front of this room for as long as you damn well want. We're still not going to get this right. You're just going to lose your whole lesson to me looking stupid, which we did multiple times, and that's fine. That's on them. But the thing that struck me was how much of who we are setting aside what we do, but who we are as people is shaped by the skills we develop and how we develop them.
Mm-hmm.
And how will changing how we develop, or if we develop certain skills, change us as human beings and therefore our relationships with each other?
Mm.
So, prime example, we were very, very fortunate to have some lovely people who were, quite young and new to the industry join us for like an evening social learning network after the first day of the event. Amazing. One of my favorite things about going to these events and organizing social gatherings afterwards is that combination of people who know no one in the industry, are new, are kind of stepping out into the wider world beyond their organization for the first time, and then a room full of people who've been doing this for years, know everyone, have worked in 10 different places, bringing those people together and kind of seeing the conversation happen. Amazing. We had a phenomenally interesting conversation about first steps when you do have to, go from idea, objective, blah, 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 to creating a piece of learning. All of them, without fail, said, I put it into ChatGPT and asked for a course outline. Not one of them had ever done that without ChatGPT. So there are a whole set of skills there that they have never developed.
Like my instinct is to be offended, right? That's my gut reaction.
That's the human thing,
to be offended, right? But then I go, but is that really different than if we just get handed a course outline already? Or like a topic, right? Like we get topic lists from stakeholders, right? And we have to kind of like back design those into objectives or something, right? Because they say this has to be in the course, right? So do I feel offended by it? I don't know. What's the difference? Like truly, let me what's the difference between putting something into ChatGPT and getting a course outline and going up and down a Bloom's taxonomy pyramid and picking a verb and going, boom, this is a verb I'm going to use for my learning objective? Is there a difference?
Yeah, the Bloom situation's worse. Significantly worse. But
I don't disagree.
It was funny because I had the same initial sort of like, oh, how do I feel about that? I realized very quickly that actually I don't personally care. What worries me about it is having never developed the skills to do it yourself, you have no way of knowing whether or not what ChatGPT has just given you is bollocks or a really good idea.
That's very true.
That there is no
very true.
Without the underlying skill set, you don't know if you're being lied to. It's a bit like when we use ChatGPT to explain something to us that we have no understanding of, because it will very confidently go, yeah, this, let me explain that to you. And it's just talking nonsense.
Yes. ChatGPT is notoriously, confidently wrong.
And that's my concern. Like I've pretty much, I think, now got to the point where I can say I've got no issue with how much someone uses it. Like, as long as they're comfortable, their organization is happy, whatever. My concern, as opposed to discomfort maybe, is that without the underlying skills,
yes,
you have no way of currently knowing how much of that is solid. And similarly, if ChatGPT were to disappear tomorrow, would half the industry be able to function? But that's maybe a longer term concern. The same could be true of.
Is it though? I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like at some point someone would have said the same thing about calculators. I remember being told, "Oh well, what if the internet went down? You wouldn't be able to do your job." It's like that's usually a somewhat facetious argument because usually a skill translates from one to the other. But in this scenario, it doesn't, because there's a fundamental I don't need that skill anymore, because this will replace it entirely. It's not a new modality for doing it. It's I don't need to do it anymore. And that's where I'm uncertain about what that means in the long term.
Sure. Yeah.
Bummer.
Okay.
That's do you know what? Ever since that happened, I've been thinking like, I don't know what to think about this, and I still don't think I have an answer. Like it makes me very
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but I think more just due to uncertainty about what it means than maybe the reality of it. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess the other part is that I cannot imagine not having those skills. Like in my mind,
Right.
I can't do my job without them.
Absolutely. It's what allows
Mm,
me to be able to consult properly, right? Like I cannot articulate all the time how I can look at a problem and go, "Oh, I know the best way to solve this. I know what
mm,
to do. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to be we're going to try this and we're going to add this." And like just today I was like in the middle of solving like a really big training problem and going, "Okay, let's try this." And they were like, "Oh, we never thought of that before," right? Because they wouldn't, right? Because I've been looking at problems like this for almost a decade now.
mm.
Are you looking at the chat? It's popping off.
It is, and it's really good. And
I
this
know.
this kind of
Let's
shows that
talk about it.
this is the kind of this is the kind of conversation that I wish happened at the actual event more. But the trouble is, and this is by the way no shade on events because I've tried it and it doesn't work because you can't do this in a neat 45-minute pre-packaged event slot. You would need that's true. The only event where I think it might work is like an unconference. If anyone's been to one of those before,
Yeah.
a lady called Fiona McBride here in the UK runs like phenomenal ones of this. But they're really difficult. Like I can't do it. The idea of something not I need it to be time boxed and organized and this
I'm
topic and that
shocked.
next thing. Yeah. Shock. Tom needs an agenda and a strict list of things that this will adhere to. Right. Let's not dive into that. So, but yeah, I mean, there's some good stuff in chat. Like what skill comes next? Validation through better research. Was that Raymar? I, I think it's so challenging though because ChatGPT doesn't, to my mind, and this is I don't tend to use the tool in this way, so I'd probably need to play with it a lot more in that sense to get a grip for it. But it doesn't, to my mind, I can't trust it to explain its thinking if I can't trust its output in the first place. So how can I validate it? It's very difficult to unpick. And if I go about doing that, why didn't I just do the work in the first place? Like,
Right. Well, and it's
mm,
designed as a service agent, right? Like it is designed to give you what you want at all costs. And that is why
true.
it is so confidently wrong because its primary objective is to answer your question every time and make you happy, right? Like the way, because I pay like the $20 a month, right? And the way ChatGPT talks to me is like is like I'll talk down on myself and it'll correct me and be like, no, you're not that, and then go on to answer my question, right? Because I'll use talk to text a lot,
Mm,
so it'll get my editorial. Like I'll be like, I know this is kind of a dumb idea, but I'm thinking this, da 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 da, and it'll be like, first of all, that's not a dumb idea, right? Like, and it's actually started to rewire the way I talk about myself, which is like a net positive, oddly enough.
right. Yeah.
But like the primary objective is for it to make you happy, right? It cares more about making you happy than it does about being right. And that's the problem.
And I think that's the thing where I think that's possibly why this particular use case felt so alien to me, because quite a while ago, like I stopped using it for anything where I had to be right about something. I use it now for a lot of like conversational partnery stuff. Like I've been working on what, like, I don't often use it in writing at all now because I don't find it helpful. I find it dilutes what I want to say to be very vanilla. Um,
Yeah.
but I am using it right now for an article, not to try and write it, but to make sure I don't end my career with an article. Because I've been working on it for quite some time, and it's not often that I'm that careful about something that I'm writing because
Sure.
usually it's last week was all edtech articles. I feel pretty safe saying whatever the hell I want about edtech. I'm currently working on an article about my concerns about the lived experience versus actual research and data discussion.
Sure.
Because I think it's not great where we're at right now. However, though, that's a topic that will upset people and will not go down well, and people will fervently disagree or agree or misconstrue what I say to support an argument I think is disgusting or whatever. So I've been using it a lot to say, hey, please take the worst possible version of what I'm saying here and feed it back to me.
Sure.
Please adopt the persona of X, Y, and Z unlikable person. What would they make of this article? Or how would they use this article? Or stuff like that. I don't care if it's accurate. I'm just trying to get a feel for what the potential impact is. Flip side of that is if I'm doing some, I don't know, research, or I'm trying to put together a course, like some client work, I won't use ChatGPT for it, simply because I'm concerned about inaccuracy being introduced. And I don't know. There's a lot going on in the chat. In my experience, only validation through my own discernment. Sorry, I'm struggling to read. It's like getting in an Uber versus walking there. Can you walk? Yes. Is it better to call an Uber? Yes. Interesting. Okay, that's yeah. I could see that. I guess my point, I guess it's a. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I guess my counter would be kind of like, if you can, would you ever want to give up the ability to walk there? Because that's where my concern is. If I've got the skill, I can choose whether or not to walk or get an Uber each time. If I've only ever got and this is where the walking, you don't lose the ability to walk by getting Uber too many times, but potentially, if, let's say, I love to paint. If I put down a paintbrush, got rid of my paints, got rid of canvases, and instead AI generated every bit of art I ever wanted, I would, over time, lose the limited ability that I have to paint.
Yeah.
The skills are often perishable. In fact, almost all skills are perishable to some degree. And I think especially workplace skills, if I were to never write another course, I'd probably become really bad at writing courses.
Sure.
That's my concern, is that we surrender, and then I would become less able to spot bad ones. Yeah. I suspect, or at least less able to fix it when there was a bad one. And that's where my unease sits, is in that perishing of skills. And again, how that changes us as human beings, how that changes our ability to converse and have interesting conversations. Like, if neither of us were writing courses anymore and just getting ChatGPT to do it, in a year's time, we would not be able to have an interesting conversation about writing courses. We would just be exchanging prompt ideas.
Yes. I think some people are already there, honestly. I really do. And I think as we see a shift towards more serious AI use, there's also this equal and opposite pole towards like authenticity and being human. And, just like, we used to call it, like, several years ago, like pre-COVID, I want to say, showing up as yourself to work or something like that, right? Like, remember how we used to like say stuff like that? And it was like real. It's like, how much of yourself do you want to, and I love the way you described it, where you talked about professional distance, right? Like, in how much space you want between your professional persona versus your personal. But I think that's reducing, right? Like, I think that's becoming thinner as people are realizing, I don't know. I feel like people miss that connection, right? And so I think we're going to continue to see that pendulum swing the other way, where people are going to go, wait a minute, like, I don't know how to do this. Let's bring it back to math. I don't know how to do this math problem longhand. I've only ever used a calculator for it, but maybe I need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's not very often we kind of have a conversation where it's like, I have no concept of what the answer to this is.
I don't know.
It's just it's really, really fascinating, and I think it's a conversation that I hope we see more of in the industry as a whole. Less about obviously what we can do with AI, fantastic. Let's absolutely discuss that. But it would be great to see more conversation or more counter conversation to that's great. And what are the benefits to the business? But also, what are the human risks attached to this becoming commonplace?
Sure.
Because like and I'm aware we're over time, so I want to wrap this one up. But I love what I do, and therefore I want to give very little of it over to an AI
Yeah.
because
Yes.
I mean, there are parts of my job that I hate. Like if I could hand my tax return over to an AI, I would do that in an instant and be no worse off for it.
Oh.
Um,
You can't in the UK? That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, no, that would slightly concern me. The whole kind of, fill out wrong and there's a fine or potentially a jail term. That's, unpopular when it could just hallucinate and go, yes, Tom has made no money this year, therefore owes no tax. Which sounds great until someone knocks on the door and says, we suspect this may not be true. Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see more conversation, and I'd like to see, everyone in the chat, I think it shared some really good points.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and my frustration is so often that the I don't know, the what about human skills and interpersonal stuff conversation gets labeled as anti-AI or anti-tech, and it's really not. Like I love technology. I think AI is really exciting,
Yeah.
really, definitely a big part of our future, but people also need to be there and need to be part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Penelope has a really good closing quote here for us.
So I can't wait to see what other human skills emerge as a result of us being able to delegate to AI. Perhaps soft skills will finally get the respect they deserve. Oh, yeah, that would be rather exciting, wouldn't it?
I
Love
can't
that.
say anything better than that to wrap it up.
Amazing. Well, look, I want to say, Heidi, thank you for taking the time out to
Yeah. Thank
to
you.
come and chat with us, and thank you all for joining us. We'll obviously be back next month. There will actually be, incredibly, on the channel some videos launching this month after my failure to get anything done last month. The run up to LT was horrendous. So yeah, lots of videos coming out this month. Do come and join us for those. If you haven't already, please check out the Instructional Design Chips Patreon, where you can also find out about all our new IDTX conferences coming next year. There will be 4 of them, 1 virtual and 3 in person. It's all very exciting. The 3 in-person ones, we will have the Innovation Conference, we will have the Learning Sciences Conference, which I'm particularly excited about, and an entire one-day conference dedicated to accessible learning design.
Ooh.
So lots of cool stuff coming in 2026. Thank you all for joining us. And Heidi, where can people find you as well and your fantastic community?
Look me up on LinkedIn and you can find links to my community and podcast and anything else you don't want to know.
Amazing. Well, have a lovely rest of the evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. And if not before, we'll see you next month.